Welcome to the Dream Coach podcast. My name is Shayla, and I don't know about you, but I have definitely attempted to implement habits that just sometimes haven't stuck. And as we think about being 1 month into 2025, it's easy sometimes to let the habits that we wanted to start at the beginning of a new year kind of lose sight. And in this episode, I'm going to break down 5 key components to really create long-term sustainable habits. And whether you are looking to improve your health, your business, or personal growth, mastering the habit formula will definitely help you stay consistent and see those results. And there's a few people that, have inspired me to rethink some of my habits. And as we know, success in business often comes down to consistent habits rather than one-time efforts. And so I want to share some powerful real life examples where the right habits have led to incredible results. So Warren Buffett, he has the habit of being a lifelong learner. And his success habit is he reads 5 to 6 hours a day. Jeff Bezos' habit is long-term thinking. And his success habit, he says, always ask, will it matter in 10 years? Elon Musk's success habit is using time blocking to manage 5 major companies efficiently. And so the habit of relentless work ethic and time management. Sarah Blakely, one of my favorites, her habit is the habit of resilience and daily reflection. So her habit is she keeps a journal of failures and lessons learned. Oprah Winfrey has the habit of daily gratitude and vision, and she writes down 5 things that she's grateful for every single night. Bill Gates has the habit of thinking weeks, calls them think weeks. And so he takes 2 think weeks per year for deep reflection and strategy. And I could share many, many more. But where I really want to dive into today is, although habits are there, the habits that we create for ourselves is what is going to lead to the long-term success. And so I want to jump into habits and not just habits, because we all know what habits are, but really how do we implement something into our life that we know is going to create long-term success? And how do we make it stick? And so with the habit formula, I've really broken it down into 5 key ways to create that long-term success. And for those of you that have been listening to this podcast for a while, or you've had an opportunity to have me as your small business coach, you know that I'm really, really passionate about the clarity, right? Really defining the why. And there's so much intention behind why we do what we do. And I really believe that this is how we define them. So the first key thing is just having that clarity. And I found for myself, there's a lot of habits that other people have done or I've heard of, or different systems. And if they're not in alignment with really why I want that habit for myself, they often don't stick. And so without clarity, it's easy to feel lost or unmotivated. And when we have really vague goals like, well, I want to exercise more, that just lacks direction, and it makes it harder to be more consistently consistently take action. And so when we think about being really, really specific, is we have to dive into why, right? Why is this habit important? And so when we think about uncovering that deep emotional reason, is we have to almost go like 5, 6, 7 layers deep. So I'll just use exercise because it's a simple one, but this applies into business and it applies into your life. Is, well, why do you want to exercise? Right? Well, I want to be healthy, but why? So I have energy for my kids, but why? Because I want to be active in their lives, but why? Because I want to set a strong example for them, right? So now this habit has a personal significance, and this very much carries into our businesses and how we lead people, because we need to lead ourselves, and we need to have the reasons why these habits matter really, really ingrained in ourselves, so that in our businesses, they really show up, and then they can be duplicated with the people that we lead. The second thing that I've found that's really helped me ingrain habits, not just in my own life and my own business, but with other businesses I work with, is to start small and build momentum. We're all human, and we get motivated and inspired at certain times in our life, and we kind of want to change sometimes everything at one time. And what I found for myself, especially in businesses that I've worked with, is that when we overcomplicate a habit, it makes it really easy to quit. And so if something feels overwhelming, your brain resists it, starting small just helps us build more confidence and consistency. And so what I found is that when we want to implement a habit, or we're trying to implement new systems even, right? Habit systems, right? Something that we want to have consistent, whether it's in our own life or it's our own business, is instead of saying, I'm going to tackle this XYZ big goal, just start really simple. So an example I'll use here would be sometimes we want to, implement a staff meeting every single day all of a sudden. We feel like communication is so key. And at the same time, if we've never had staff meetings ever, doing it all of a sudden daily is going to feel really overwhelming. And it's probably not going to stick. But we could start with a staff meeting even every month, right? Maybe building it up bi-weekly or bi-monthly. And so we want to be able to start small so that we can gain really good traction. And so what's the absolute smallest version of this habit that we could do to start to create that consistency for ourselves? The third thing is just the triggers. I have really found that there's always great ideas out there, but I have to, even for myself in my own business and what I help other businesses do is how do we attach this new habit to something we're already doing? So maybe it's, I'm going to check my email and then I'm going to, do XYZ with my business plan, right? And so when we set up cues for success, this helps us be consistent and it eliminates, that friction. It makes bad habits harder and it makes good habits easier. And so habits are easier to form when they're anchored to an existing behavior or an external reminder. So your environment can either support or sabotage your habits. And if you've read the book Atomic Habits, they really speak about this, where there's lots of things in our life that we're already doing in business. So how do we take something that we want to implement? A lot of times I'll work with businesses on just parking lot at the end of the day, I call it. And a lot of people I find that are overwhelmed, they don't have boundaries and their businesses are kind of all over the place, is oftentimes we kind of wrap up our workday and then we just go right back into our personal life. And so an example of implementing a habit is just an end of the day report, an end of the day update, implementing something before you just log off for the day that allows you to reflect on, well, what even happened today? What were some wins? What do I need to do tomorrow? And it just, that simple habit I found with businesses just allows them to separate the business from, implementing, going back into our personal life. Accountability is huge. For myself, there's no way I would have success in my life without accountability. And that can look different for lots of different people, lots of different businesses. Some people leverage community and they allow that commitment within that community. Some of them, it's more working in a mastermind group or having an accountability partner, right? And this is important because willpower, we're human. Willpower will fade, but that social pressure keeps you consistent, and accountability creates that motivation, that encouragement and responsibility. There's nothing wrong with us if we're not motivated all the time. But when we have that accountability, we have those masterminds, we have a coach, it allows us to remember and to have people in our circle that remind us the why, which is the very starting point of implementing a habit. Tracking your progress and sharing updates with that accountability partner or that group allows you to stay accountable. And with the point of having a habit or a system even is because we want to be able to get those long-term results. And then lastly, the fifth one is just to have these rewards set in place. So make it satisfying where we can track our progress. That dopamine effect where there's instant gratification, that sometimes can help our habits stick longer too. So sometimes when we break down a habit into something super small, we can use habit trackers or apps or even journaling and just celebrating those milestones of I did XYZ today. And when I'm helping a business implement a new habit, or in business, sometimes we'll refer to them as a system, is we might not nail it 5 days a week right from the get-go. But if we did that habit twice or 3 times, then that's still a win. And we're really quick to sometimes think about all the things that we didn't do. But again, it's really important when we're implementing a new habit to celebrate the wins along the way, right? And what happens is as we celebrate that, our brain starts to crave instant gratification. If a habit feels good, you want to repeat it. And so rewarding progress reinforces that positive behavior. So celebrating small wins, stacking rewards where maybe it's, you almost limit yourself to certain things that you enjoy. So maybe it's you're not going to listen to that favorite podcast until, you finish replying to those emails or whatever the case is. But we want to make sure that we ask ourselves, how can I make this habit fun? When habits feel rewarding, they become effortless. And so just to kind of pull together here, the 5 key takeaways of habit success is clarity, right? Figuring out what it is that we want. Simplicity, starting small, having triggers. So what is something that we're already doing that we can add this new habit to? Having accountability, right? Who can we help hold this accountable to the new habit we want to implement, and then rewarding ourselves along the way. And also just be mindful that there's lots of common mistakes that we see too with habits, and how we can overcome them is I've seen, especially when we think about where we are now in February, common habit mistakes can be starting too big too fast. So if you started to implement too many habits in January and we've maybe fallen off, just give yourself a little bit of grace and say, hey, that's okay. I started too big, I started too fast. I'm just going to simplify the habit I want to implement. It doesn't have to be all or nothing thinking. Oftentimes we think we have to change everything and we end up changing nothing. And so focusing on progress, not perfection, and I speak of that a lot, and just focusing on what can I control today? What habit can I implement today? Relying on motivation instead of systems. And systems is one of the biggest things that I help small businesses with is we can be motivated and we can have these ideas. But unfortunately, that motivation doesn't always last forever. So how do we build habits into your identity and using that system instead of just motivation? And not making adjustments when life gets busy, right? Sometimes we can just cut those habits out when things are going so great, things get a little busy, we get off track, and then we sort of have these like bare minimum habits. So how do we have a minimum standard in our habits, even when things do get a little bit busy? So my challenge for you is if we had habits in January and maybe we haven't continued to go them as we're 5, 6 weeks into the year, what's one habit that we can implement and use this formula this week? So again, appreciate you listening, and remember that success is built daily, one small habit at a time. If you like today's episode, please share on your socials and tag Shayla Way Coaching, and look forward to talking to y'all soon.